The sky turned red on a Tuesday morning. Major Kyle Harrison was drinking his coffee when the alarm started screaming. He dropped his cup and ran to the control room. Every screen showed the same thing. Thousands of alien ships were entering Earth's atmosphere. Nobody had seen them coming. The ships appeared out of nowhere, like they had been hiding behind the moon. They were huge, each one the size of a football stadium, and there were so many of them that they blocked out the sun in some places. The first city to fall was Mumbai. The aliens dropped something from their ships that looked like blue lightning. When it hit the ground, buildings exploded. Glass shattered for miles. People ran screaming through the streets, but there was nowhere to go. Within 1 hour, Mumbai was gone. Then Tokyo vanished. Then Moscow. Then London. The pattern was clear. The aliens were targeting the biggest cities first. They wanted to kill as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. Kyle watched the screens with horror. His hands were shaking. He had been a soldier for 15 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. These aliens, whoever they were, had technology that made human weapons look like toys. The military tried to fight back. Fighter jets took off from bases around the world. Missiles were launched. Even nuclear weapons were used. But nothing worked. The alien ships had shields that protected them from everything humans could throw at them. By the end of the first day, 1 billion people were dead. By the end of the second day, the number had reached 3 billion. The aliens, which the government started calling the Krell, were winning, and they were winning easily. The Krell soldiers came next. They landed in huge metal suits that made them look like giant insects. Each suit was covered in black armor that bullets could not break. They carried weapons that shot beams of red light. Anything hit by those beams simply melted. Kyle was ordered to evacuate to an underground bunker in Colorado. He did not want to run, but orders were orders. As he drove through the streets, he saw things he would never forget. Buildings were burning. Cars were flipped over. Bodies lay everywhere. The world was ending, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. At the bunker, Kyle met with other survivors from the military. General Frank Morrison was in charge. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past 2 days. The general called a meeting. Everyone gathered around a big table covered with maps and reports. The news was all bad. The Krell controlled most of the major cities now. Human forces were scattered and weak. Food and water were running out. There were too few weapons and too many aliens. Someone asked the question everyone was thinking. How long did humanity have left? The general did not answer right away. He just stared at the maps for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Maybe a few weeks, he said. Maybe less. That night, Kyle could not sleep. He lay in his small room thinking about his family. His parents had been in New York when the attack started. He had not heard from them since. He tried not to think about what that meant, but the thoughts came anyway. The next morning, something strange happened. A woman arrived at the bunker asking to speak with the general. Her name was Dr. Amy Chen, and she was a scientist who studied animals. She looked exhausted and dirty, like she had been walking for days, but her eyes were bright with excitement. Kyle was assigned to escort her to the general's office. As they walked, she talked nonstop. She said she had discovered something important, something that could help in the war. Kyle did not believe her. What could an animal scientist possibly know that would help fight aliens? But when they reached the office, Amy pulled out a tablet and showed them video footage. The video was shaky and dark, but Kyle could see what was happening. A group of dogs, big German shepherds, were attacking a Krell soldier. The alien tried to shoot them, but the dogs were too fast. They moved in a pattern, working together like a team. The alien's armor had weak spots at the joints. The dogs seemed to know this. They bit at those exact spots, tearing through the weaker material. The Krell soldier tried to fight back, but there were too many dogs. Finally, the armor broke and the alien fell. The dogs did not stop. They kept attacking until the alien stopped moving. Then, before more Krell could arrive, the dogs ran away and disappeared into the ruins of the city. The room was silent when the video ended. Everyone was staring at the screen. Kyle felt something he had not felt in days: hope. It was small and fragile, but it was there. Amy explained what she had learned. The Krell seemed to have no experience fighting animals. Their tactics were designed to fight other soldiers, not packs of dogs. They did not understand how to defend against creatures that could move fast, attack from multiple directions, and work together without speaking. The general leaned forward in his chair. He asked Amy if she thought this could be used on a larger scale. Could they train more animals to fight? Could they turn Earth's creatures into weapons? Amy nodded. She said there were still thousands of trained dogs around the world. Police dogs, military dogs, even pet dogs that had been abandoned when their owners died. There were also wild animals. Wolves, bears, big cats. If they could organize them, coordinate them, they might have a chance. The general looked around the room at his officers. Kyle could see the doubt on their faces. Using animals to fight an alien invasion sounded crazy, but they had no other options. Every conventional weapon had failed. They had nothing left to lose. The general made his decision. He authorized a new program. They would gather every animal expert they could find. Dog trainers, zookeepers, wildlife scientists. They would create units that combined human soldiers with animals. It was desperate and probably impossible, but it was the only plan they had. Kyle was assigned to help coordinate the program. As he left the meeting, he looked at Amy. She was smiling despite everything. She believed this would work. Kyle wanted to believe it too. He needed to believe it, because if this plan failed, humanity was finished. That night, Kyle stood outside the bunker and looked up at the sky. The stars were hidden behind smoke and clouds. Somewhere out there, the Krell were celebrating their victory. They thought Earth was defeated. They thought humans were weak and helpless, but they did not know about the dogs. They did not know about the wolves and bears and eagles. They did not know that Earth's creatures had been fighting and surviving for millions of years. And they definitely did not know that humans and animals had been partners for thousands of years. Kyle made a promise to himself. He would make this work. He would help turn Earth's animals into an army. And together, humans and beasts would show the Krell that this planet was not going to fall without a fight. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The first week of Operation Guardian was chaos. Kyle and Amy worked day and night to find people who knew how to handle animals. They sent messages through every remaining radio station and internet connection. The message was simple. If you know how to train dogs, if you work with animals, if you have any experience at all, come to Colorado. People came from everywhere. There was Ryan Foster, a former Marine who had trained military dogs for 10 years. There was Lisa Martinez, a veterinarian from Texas. There was an old man named Carl who had worked at a zoo for 40 years. And there were dozens of others, each bringing their own skills and knowledge. The bunker became a training center. They gathered every dog they could find. Some came from military bases. Some were police dogs whose handlers had died. Some were just pets that had survived the attacks and were wandering the ruins looking for their families. Kyle watched as Ryan worked with a big German shepherd named Max. The dog had belonged to a police officer in Denver. When the Krell attacked, the officer had died protecting a group of children. Max had stayed with the children until rescue teams found them 3 days later. Ryan was teaching Max to recognize Krell soldiers. He used pictures and videos, rewarding the dog each time he correctly identified an alien. Max was smart and learned quickly. Within 2 days, he could spot a Krell from 100 yards away. But identifying the enemy was only the first step. The dogs needed to learn how to attack effectively. Lisa discovered something important while studying the Krell armor. The suits had cooling systems with vents near the joints. These vents were smaller and weaker than the main armor. They were the perfect target. The trainers taught the dogs to aim for these weak points. They used dummy targets that looked like Krell soldiers. The dogs practiced attacking the joints again and again until it became instinct. When they saw a Krell, they would automatically go for the vulnerable spots. Amy worked on a different problem. The dogs were effective, but they needed protection. The Krell weapons could kill a dog instantly. She designed lightweight armor made from salvaged alien materials. The armor covered the dog's vital areas but was light enough that they could still move quickly. 3 weeks after the program started, they were ready for their first real mission. General Morrison wanted to test the concept before committing fully. He chose a target carefully. There was a small Krell garrison in the ruins of Houston, Texas. Intelligence reports said about 20 aliens were stationed there. It was small enough to be manageable, but large enough to prove whether the plan would work. Ryan was chosen to lead the mission. He took 15 dogs and 10 human soldiers. Kyle went with them as an observer. They traveled at night using abandoned roads and staying hidden. The journey took 3 days. When they reached Houston, Kyle saw the devastation up close for the first time. The city was unrecognizable. Buildings were collapsed or burned. Cars were melted into lumps of metal. Bodies still lay in the streets. The smell was horrible. Kyle had to cover his face with a cloth just to breathe. The Krell garrison was located in what used to be a shopping mall. The aliens had set up barriers and guard posts. Kyle counted 15 soldiers visible from their position. There were probably more inside the building. Ryan studied the garrison through binoculars. He was calm and focused. He had done this kind of work before, just never against aliens. He gave quiet orders to his team. Each person knew their role. Each dog knew what to do. The attack began at dawn. The human soldiers opened fire from a distance, drawing the Krell's attention. The aliens responded exactly as expected. They moved toward the gunfire, focusing all their attention on the human threat. That was when Ryan released the dogs. 15 dogs moved like shadows through the rubble. They came from 3 different directions, surrounding the Krell soldiers. The aliens did not see them coming until it was too late. Max was the first to reach his target. He leaped at a Krell soldier from behind, his teeth finding the weak point at the knee joint. The alien tried to turn and shoot, but 2 more dogs hit him from the sides. Within seconds, the soldier was down. Kyle watched in amazement as the dogs worked together. They did not just attack randomly. They coordinated, taking turns distracting the aliens while others struck at vulnerable points. It was like watching a pack of wolves hunt, except these wolves wore armor and had been trained to fight alien invaders. The Krell tried to adapt. Some turned their weapons on the dogs, but the animals were too fast and too smart. They dodged the energy beams and attacked from angles the aliens could not cover. And whenever a dog was in danger, the others would intervene, protecting each other. The battle lasted 12 minutes. When it was over, all 20 Krell soldiers were dead or disabled. 3 dogs had been injured, but none were killed. The human soldiers had barely fired a shot after the initial attack. Ryan called for the medic to treat the wounded dogs. He knelt beside Max, checking him for injuries. The dog was panting hard but seemed fine. Ryan scratched behind Max's ears and whispered something Kyle could not hear. The dog's tail wagged once. Kyle sent a message back to the bunker. Mission successful. All objectives achieved, minimal casualties. The response came quickly from General Morrison. 2 words. Send more. News of the victory spread through the resistance networks. Other groups wanted to try the same tactics. Within days, reports came in from around the world. In Germany, a team used trained police dogs to clear a Krell checkpoint. In Japan, survivors had organized packs of wild dogs to harass alien supply lines. In Australia, someone had the brilliant idea of using dingoes. Amy started receiving questions from other scientists. Could this work with other animals? What about wolves? What about big cats? What about birds? She realized they had only scratched the surface. Dogs were just the beginning. Earth had millions of species, many of them predators with abilities humans could never match. Bears were stronger than any human. Eagles had better eyesight. Wolves could track prey for miles. Dolphins could find underwater targets. The program expanded rapidly. Carl, the old zookeeper, was put in charge of a new division focused on larger animals. He started recruiting people who worked with wildlife. Rangers from national parks, scientists who studied animal behavior, even circus trainers who knew how to work with elephants and big cats. Lisa made another important discovery. The Krell seemed to have no concept of pack hunting. Their own planet apparently did not have animals that worked together. They had evolved fighting solitary predators. This meant they had no defense strategy for coordinated attacks by multiple creatures. This weakness changed everything. It meant that Earth's animals had a fundamental advantage. Lions hunted in groups. Wolves hunted in packs. Even birds like crows and ravens worked together. These behaviors confused and overwhelmed the Krell. Kyle stood in the command center 1 month after the Houston mission and looked at the map. Red markers showed Krell positions. Blue markers showed resistance forces. For the first time since the invasion began, there were more blue markers than red in some areas. They were not winning yet. The Krell still controlled most of the planet. They still had their ships in orbit. They still had superior technology. But humanity was fighting back and they were not fighting alone. Ryan entered the room with Max at his side. The dog had become famous among the resistance. Soldiers asked to pet him for good luck before missions. Children drew pictures of him. Someone had even made Max a special medal from a piece of salvaged metal. Ryan reported that they had trained 50 more dogs and were ready for another mission. This time bigger. This time they were going after a major Krell supply depot. Kyle approved the mission immediately. Every victory, no matter how small, was important. Every dead alien was one less threat to humanity's survival. As Ryan left to prepare, Kyle allowed himself a moment of hope. They had found a way to fight back. They had found allies in the most unexpected place. Earth's animals were joining the war, and together they might just have a chance. 3 months after the invasion began, the war had changed completely. The Krell still controlled large parts of the planet, but they were losing ground, and they were losing it to an enemy they had never expected to face. Amy was promoted to colonel and put in charge of all animal operations worldwide. She worked from a command center that had screens showing operations on every continent. Dogs in Europe, bears in Russia, big cats in Africa, eagles in North America. The planet's creatures were joining the fight. Carl had achieved something remarkable in Africa. He had made contact with wildlife conservation groups who had survived the invasion. Together, they had organized the continent's large animals into defensive forces. Elephants were particularly effective against Krell vehicles. A full-grown bull elephant could flip an alien transport truck with ease. Kyle watched video footage from Kenya. A small Krell convoy was moving through the savannah when it was ambushed by a group of elephants. The massive animals charged from 3 directions, trumpeting loudly. The aliens tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed for targets the size of humans, not 6-ton elephants. The lead elephant reached the first vehicle and simply pushed it over. The truck rolled 3 times before stopping. Krell soldiers scrambled out, but they were met by lions. The big cats had learned that these strange armored creatures made good prey. They attacked with the same skill they used hunting buffalo, working together to bring down each alien. Within 10 minutes, the convoy was destroyed. The elephants walked away unharmed. The lions dragged away what they wanted. The Krell were learning a hard lesson. On Earth, humans were not the only dangerous species. In the oceans, another front had opened. A marine biologist named Kate Sullivan had reached out to Amy with an idea. Dolphins and whales were smart, maybe smart enough to help in the war. The Krell had built underwater bases to support their ships. These bases were supposed to be safe from human attack. Kate and her team had been working with a pod of dolphins near Vancouver. These dolphins knew the trainers and trusted them. Kate spent weeks teaching them to recognize Krell structures underwater. She used sonar images and rewards, just like training a dog. The first mission was launched in the Pacific Ocean. The dolphins swam down to a Krell base located 200 feet underwater. Human divers followed, but they let the dolphins lead. The dolphins found the base's power cables and communication lines. The divers planted explosives on these targets, then everyone retreated to a safe distance. When the charges went off, the base went dark. Krell soldiers inside were trapped. Some tried to swim to the surface, but orcas were waiting. The huge predators had been watching from a distance. They knew these strange creatures did not belong in their ocean. The orcas attacked with brutal efficiency. Each one weighed several tons and could swim faster than any human. The Krell soldiers in their heavy armor did not stand a chance. Within an hour, the underwater base was abandoned. Kate reported the success, and similar missions were planned for other ocean bases. But the most unexpected weapon came from a quiet man named Daniel Kim. Before the invasion, Daniel had been a beekeeper in Georgia. He had 20 hives and loved his work. When the Krell came, his town was destroyed, but some of his bees survived. Daniel survived too, and he noticed something interesting. The Krell armor needed cooling systems to keep the soldiers inside from overheating. These systems had vents that pulled in outside air. Daniel realized that bees could fit through these vents, and bees could be trained to attack specific targets. He brought his idea to Kyle, who was skeptical at first. But Daniel explained that bees were already used to defending their hives. They knew how to swarm and attack as a group, and they could detect the electrical fields created by the Krell armor. With training, they could be turned into tiny flying missiles. Kyle gave Daniel permission to try. The beekeeper set up a test in an abandoned warehouse. He trained his bees to recognize the specific frequency of Krell power suits. When a soldier wearing salvaged alien armor walked into the warehouse, the bees went crazy. They swarmed the suit, found the cooling vents, and flew inside. Within minutes, the suit's temperature warning lights came on. The The soldier had to take off the armor before he cooked inside it. Daniel grinned. It worked. He could weaponize insects. The first field test was conducted in rural Tennessee. A Krell patrol had been terrorizing the area for weeks. Daniel and a small team set up several hives near the patrol route. When the aliens passed by, Daniel released the bees. Thousands of them took to the air, guided by the electromagnetic signature of the Krell armor. The aliens saw the bees coming but did not understand the danger. They tried to swat them away. Some fired their weapons, which was useless against such small targets. The bees found the cooling vents and poured inside the armor. Within seconds, every Krell soldier was tearing off their suits, trying to escape the heat and the stinging insects. Human fighters hidden nearby finished the job. The Krell, without their armor, were vulnerable. The patrol was wiped out in minutes. Not a single human was injured. Daniel's bees had done all the real work. Word of the success spread quickly. Other beekeepers volunteered their hives. Wasp nests were recruited. Even fire ants were considered. Amy created a new division specifically for insect warfare. Daniel was put in charge. Kyle stood in the command center and watched reports come in from around the world. The Krell were being hit from every direction by enemies they could not understand. Dogs tore at their armor. Bears smashed their vehicles. Birds attacked their sensors. Insects disabled their suits. Marine mammals destroyed their underwater bases. General Morrison entered the room looking pleased for the first time in months. He had just received confirmation that 3 major Krell strongholds had fallen in the past week. Human casualties were minimal. Animal casualties were even lower. The tactics were working better than anyone had dreamed possible. But Morrison brought a warning too. Intelligence had intercepted Krell communications. The aliens were frustrated and angry. They were calling for reinforcements from their fleet. A major assault was being planned, targeting the human command centers directly. The Krell wanted to cut the head off the resistance. Kyle looked at the map. The biggest human command center was right here in Colorado. If the Krell wanted to strike at leadership, this bunker would be their primary target. Morrison had already given orders to prepare for an attack. Every soldier was put on alert. Supplies were stockpiled. Defenses were reinforced, but Kyle had another idea. He called Ryan and Amy to a private meeting. If the Krell wanted to attack this location, then they should let them come. The mountains around the bunker could be turned into the perfect killing ground. They had months to prepare. They had every type of animal force at their disposal. Amy understood immediately. She started planning animal deployments. Grizzly bears in the outer perimeter, wolf packs in the forest, mountain lions on the cliffs, eagles and hawks in the air, and dogs. Hundreds of dogs forming a mobile defense that could respond to threats anywhere. Ryan added that they should use every trick they had learned. Beehives strategically placed along attack routes, elk and moose that could be stampeded into enemy formations. Even mountain goats could be useful, knocking rocks down on aliens below. Kyle presented the plan to General Morrison. The general listened carefully, then nodded. It was risky. If the plan failed, they would lose everything. But if it succeeded, they would prove once and for all that Earth could defend itself. They would show the Krell that this planet was not defenseless. The order went out. Every animal handler, every trainer, every wildlife expert was brought to Colorado. They had 1 month to prepare. 1 month to turn the Rocky Mountains into a fortress defended not by guns and missiles, but by the creatures that had lived there for thousands of years. Kyle walked outside that night and looked at the mountains. They were beautiful in the moonlight, peaceful and ancient. Soon they would become a battlefield. But this time the Krell would be the ones walking into a trap. This time Earth would be ready. The Krell attack came on a cold December morning. Kyle was in the command center when the alarm sounded. Satellites detected a large force moving toward the mountains. The size of the army was shocking. 5,000 Krell soldiers, supported by armored vehicles and flying gunships. They were coming for blood. General Morrison ordered all human forces to defensive positions inside the bunker. Only 200 soldiers would be visible to the enemy. The Krell needed to believe this would be an easy victory. They needed to push forward into the mountains where the real defense waited. Ryan stood at his command post 3 miles from the bunker. Around him were his best dog handlers and their animals. Max sat beside him, calm and ready. The dog seemed to understand that something big was about to happen. His ears were up, his eyes alert. Amy coordinated from a mobile command vehicle. She had screens showing every animal unit deployed in the mountains. Grizzly bears were in position at the outer perimeter. Wolf packs waited in the forests. Mountain lions held the high ground. Eagles circled overhead ready to dive when called. The Krell advance was visible now, a massive line of soldiers marching up the mountain roads. Their vehicles rumbled behind them. Gunships flew overhead, scanning for threats. They looked unstoppable. They looked like nothing could stand in their way. Kyle gave the order. Release the outer defense. The grizzly bear struck first. 20 massive animals emerged from caves and dense forest. Each one weighed over 800 pounds and could run faster than a human. They charged into the Krell formation with terrifying speed and power. The aliens tried to shoot them, but bears are hard to stop even with advanced weapons. Their thick hide and layers of fat absorbed damage that would kill a human, and they were so fast that most shots missed completely. When a bear reached a Krell soldier, the result was brutal. A single swipe from a bear paw could tear through the alien armor. The Krell line broke. Soldiers scattered, trying to regroup. Their vehicles moved forward to provide support. That was when the wolves attacked. 3 separate wolf packs, each containing 15 to 20 animals, came from different directions. They did not attack the main force. Instead, they went after the vehicles, targeting the exposed machinery and crew. Wolves leaped onto the vehicles, tearing at anything that looked vulnerable. One pack managed to rip open a fuel line, and the vehicle exploded in a ball of flame. From above, the eagles attacked. 50 birds of prey dove at the Krell gunships. They aimed for the engines and sensor equipment. The pilots tried to maneuver away, but eagles are incredibly agile flyers. Several gunships were forced to land. One crashed into the mountainside when an eagle managed to damage its main rotor. The Krell commander tried to maintain order. He pushed his forces forward, accepting losses to gain ground. They were still moving toward the bunker. They still believed they could win. That was when Ryan released the dogs. 600 combat dogs poured down the mountain. They came in waves, each wave hitting the Krell from a different angle. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Rottweilers, and dozens of other breeds. All trained, all armored, all ready to fight. Max led the first wave. He ran faster than Kyle had ever seen him move. Behind him came 30 more dogs, all following his lead. They hit the Krell line like a missile strike. The aliens turned to face this new threat, but they were already overwhelmed by bears and wolves. The dogs exploited every moment of confusion. Kyle watched from the command center with a mixture of pride and horror. Pride because the plan was working. Horror because he knew many of these animals would not survive. Every few seconds he saw a dog fall. Every few seconds another brave creature died protecting the humans it had bonded with. But for every animal that fell, 10 Krell soldiers died. The aliens simply could not handle this type of combat. Their training and tactics were designed for fighting other soldiers, not coordinated attacks from multiple species working together. Mountain lions joined the fight from the high cliffs. These big cats were perfect ambush predators. They would wait until a group of Krell soldiers passed below, then leap down onto them from above. The surprise was total. The damage was devastating. Daniel's insects played their role too. Beehives had been placed along all the main routes. As the Krell pushed forward, they walked past these hives. Daniel waited until the aliens were fully committed, then released the swarms. Thousands of bees filled the air, seeking the electromagnetic signature of Krell armor. The effect was immediate and chaotic. Krell soldiers started overheating. Some tore off their helmets, gasping for air. Others tried to remove their armor completely. Those who did became easy targets for the waiting animals. Those who kept their armor on cooked inside their own suits. The battle raged for 6 hours. The sun moved across the sky as the Krell force was slowly destroyed. Their initial advantage in numbers meant nothing against an enemy that attacked from the ground. From the trees, from the air, and from places too small to defend against. By afternoon, the Krell commander called for retreat. But it was too late. The animals had surrounded them. Every escape route was blocked. Every path down the mountain was controlled by wolves or bears or dogs. The aliens were trapped in a killing zone of their own making. The last Krell soldier fell just before sunset. Kyle walked out of the bunker to see the battlefield. Bodies lay everywhere, mostly alien. The smell was terrible. The sight was worse. But they had won. Against impossible odds, against a force that should have crushed them, they had won. Ryan found Kyle standing near the front line. Max was with him, limping from a minor wound but alive. Ryan looked exhausted. His eyes were red from smoke and emotion. He reported the casualties. 83 dogs lost, 12 bears, 7 wolves, 21 eagles, and countless smaller animals. Kyle felt the weight of those numbers. Each one represented a life given in defense of the planet. Each one was a creature that had trusted humans enough to fight beside them. He made a silent promise to remember them all, but the victory was complete. 5,000 Krell soldiers had marched into these mountains. None had left. The bunker was safe. The human command structure was intact. And most importantly, the battle had been recorded and broadcast across every resistance network on the planet. Amy arrived with news. The Krell fleet in orbit had detected the battle results. Their communications were going crazy. They were arguing among themselves. Some wanted to send more troops. Others wanted to retreat. But all of them were afraid. For the first time since the invasion began, the Krell were afraid of Earth. General Morrison called an emergency meeting. Every surviving officer gathered in the command center. The general looked older than his years, but there was fire in his eyes. He told them that this victory had changed everything. The Krell could be beaten. They had proven it. Now they needed to press the advantage. Intelligence reported that the Krell had one last major stronghold on Earth. A massive fortress in the Nevada desert. It housed their command center and protected their connection to the orbital fleet. If that fortress fell, the Krell would lose their ability to coordinate ground operations. They would be forced to withdraw completely or face destruction piecemeal. Morrison proposed a final assault. Every human force, every animal unit, everything they had left would be thrown at the Nevada fortress. It would be the biggest battle of the war. It would probably be the last battle. Either humanity would win and drive the Krell from Earth, or they would lose everything. The room was silent as everyone considered this. Then Ryan stood up. He said his dogs were ready. Max barked once as if agreeing. Amy stood next. Her animal forces were ready. Carl stood. The wildlife units were ready. One by one, every officer stood and pledged their forces to the assault. Kyle stood last. He looked around the room at these brave people and thought about the brave animals they commanded. This was it, the final push. Win or lose, it would end in Nevada. General Morrison nodded. The assault was approved. They would launch in 2 weeks. That gave them time to move forces into position and plan the attack. Every detail would matter. Every life was precious. They would only get one chance. That night, Kyle could not sleep. He walked through the bunker, checking on preparations. Everywhere he went, he saw soldiers working alongside animals. A handler was bandaging a dog's paw. A scientist was studying flight patterns with a hawk. A marine was reviewing underwater maps with a dolphin trainer via video call. This was what Earth had become. Not just humans fighting alone, but every species working together. It was beautiful and strange and entirely unexpected. The Krell had tried to conquer a planet. Instead, they had united it. The Nevada desert stretched out like an ocean of sand and rock. In the middle of it stood the Krell Fortress, a massive structure of alien metal and technology. It covered 10 square miles and housed over 3,000 Krell soldiers. Defense shields protected it from airstrikes. Automated weapons covered every approach. It was designed to be unbreakable. Kyle stood in a command tent 5 miles from the fortress. Around him were maps and screens showing the target. He had spent 2 weeks planning this assault with Amy, Ryan, and the other commanders. Every detail had been considered. Every possible outcome had been discussed. The human forces numbered only 1,500 soldiers. They were outnumbered 2 to 1. Their weapons were inferior. Their armor was weaker. On paper, they had no chance of victory. But paper did not account for the animals. 2,000 dogs were ready to fight. Coyotes from the surrounding desert had been recruited. Birds of prey from across the continent had gathered. Insects from Daniel's program were prepared in massive numbers. And the humans had one more advantage. They knew this planet. The Krell did not. The assault began at midnight. Human soldiers launched a direct attack on the main gates using every heavy weapon they had. Explosions lit up the night sky. Machine gun fire echoed across the desert. It was loud and obvious and exactly what the Krell expected. The fortress came alive with defensive fire. Alien weapons tore apart the human positions. Shields deflected most attacks. The automated defenses worked perfectly. From inside the fortress, the Krell commanders watched with satisfaction. The humans were doing exactly what they predicted. This would be an easy victory, but the human attack was just a distraction. While the Krell focused on the main gate, the real assault came from everywhere else. Coyotes and desert dogs infiltrated through gaps in the shield system. The shields were designed to stop large objects and energy weapons. They did not stop animals. Hundreds of four-legged fighters slipped through the defenses and entered the fortress compound. From above came the birds. Eagles, hawks, and falcons dove at the fortress's exposed equipment. They targeted communication arrays, sensor dishes, and cooling systems. The Krell tried to shoot them down, but hitting a fast-moving bird in the dark was nearly impossible. Then Daniel unleashed his insects. Billions of them. Bees, wasps, ants, and other creatures swarmed the fortress. They crawled through ventilation systems. They invaded machinery. They found their way into places no human or alien could reach, and everywhere they went they caused chaos. Power systems failed as ants short-circuited control panels. Cooling systems stopped working as bees clogged the filters. Computer systems crashed as insects damaged sensitive electronics. Within an hour, half the fortress's automated defenses were offline. Ryan gave the order. Send in the main force. 2,000 dogs charged toward the fortress. They came from all directions, moving in coordinated waves. Max led the front group, his armor gleaming in the starlight. Behind him ran dogs of every size and breed, all united in purpose. The fortress walls had breaches now, created by the coyotes and birds working together. The dogs poured through these openings like water through a dam. Once inside, they spread out, attacking any Krell soldier they found. The Krell tried to regroup, but organization was impossible. Every time they formed a defensive line, dogs attacked from behind. Every time they tried to advance, birds dove at their heads. Every time they called for support, their communications equipment failed because insects had destroyed it. Kyle watched the battle through drone cameras. The fortress was descending into chaos. Fires burned in multiple sections. Explosions rocked the buildings. Krell soldiers ran in panic, unable to understand how their perfect fortress was falling apart. Human soldiers pushed through the main gate, which was no longer defended properly. They moved carefully, supported by dogs at every step. Whenever they encountered resistance, the dogs would attack first, drawing fire and creating openings for the humans to exploit. Amy coordinated the animal forces from her command vehicle. She could see everything through multiple camera feeds. She directed wolf packs to cut off escape routes. She sent birds to attack specific targets. She released new waves of insects whenever the Krell tried to restore power to their systems. The battle raged through the night. By dawn, the outer sections of the fortress were secure. Human and animal forces controlled most of the compound. Only the central command building remained in Krell hands. That was where their leadership was hiding, protected by their best soldiers and their strongest defenses. Ryan gathered his best dog handlers for the final push. Max was exhausted but still ready to fight. The other dogs sensed this was the end. They waited quietly, conserving their strength for one last effort. The assault on the command building began at noon. Human soldiers breached the main entrance while dogs came through windows and ventilation shafts. The fighting inside was brutal and close. Every room was contested. Every hallway became a battleground. Max and his team reached the command center first. They burst through a set of heavy doors to find the Krell commanders inside. The aliens raised their weapons, but before they could fire, 20 dogs hit them from all sides. The fight lasted less than a minute. When Kyle entered the command center, it was over. The Krell leaders were dead or captured. Their equipment was destroyed. Their connection to the orbital fleet was cut. The fortress had fallen. Ryan sat on the floor with Max beside him. Both were breathing hard. Both had minor wounds. But both were alive. Around them, other dogs and humans were resting, too exhausted to celebrate. Amy arrived with news. The Krell fleet was retreating. Without their ground command, they could not coordinate operations. Without the fortress, they had no way to maintain their presence on Earth. They were leaving. The invasion was over. Kyle wanted to feel joy, but he was too tired. He walked through the fortress, seeing the cost of victory. Dead animals lay everywhere. Brave dogs who had given everything. Birds who had flown their last mission. Even insects. Billions of tiny warriors who had played their part. The human casualties were significant too. Over 300 soldiers had died in the assault. These were people who had survived the initial invasion, who had fought for months, who had almost made it to the end. But Earth was free. The Krell were gone. Humanity had survived. General Morrison flew to the fortress that afternoon. He walked through the ruins with Kyle, surveying the damage and the victory. He stopped when he saw Max lying near Ryan, both of them asleep from exhaustion. The general stood there for a long moment, just watching the soldier and his dog. Morrison turned to Kyle and asked a question. What should they tell the world about what happened here? How could they explain that Earth was saved by dogs and birds and insects? Kyle thought about it. Then he said they should tell the truth. They should tell everyone that when aliens attacked Earth, it was not just humans who fought back. Every creature on this planet defended its home. The dogs who had lived with humans for thousands of years, the wild animals who shared the forests and mountains, even the smallest insects played their part. Morrison nodded slowly. He liked that answer. It was honest, and it honored every life that had been lost in the war. That night, the victory was announced to the world. In refugee camps and hidden bunkers, people celebrated. They cried tears of relief and joy. They had survived. Against all odds, against impossible enemies, humanity had survived, and they had not done it alone. They had help from friends who asked for nothing in return. Friends who fought because it was the right thing to do. Friends who proved that courage and loyalty existed in every species, not just humans. Kyle stood in the Nevada desert watching the sun set. The fortress was quiet now. The battle was over. The war was won. Around him, soldiers and animals were resting together, sharing water and food, too tired to maintain any barriers between species. A young corporal approached Kyle. She had a question. Would the animals understand what they had done? Would they know they had saved the world? Kyle looked at Max, who was awake now and watching him with intelligent eyes. He thought about all the animals he had seen over the past months. The brave dogs who never hesitated. The fierce bears who defended their territory. The clever birds who learned so quickly. The tiny insects who fought enemies 1,000,000 times their size. He told the corporal that maybe the animals did not understand it the way humans did. They did not think about saving the world or defeating evil. But they understood something more important. They understood home. They understood family. They understood that when your home is threatened, you fight to protect it. And that, Kyle said, was all that really mattered. 3 days after the fortress fell, the Krell sent a message. It came through captured communication equipment, translated by computers that humans had learned to operate. The message was short and formal. The Krell acknowledged their defeat. They requested terms for a complete withdrawal from Earth. Kyle sat in the meeting where human leaders discussed how to respond. Some wanted to destroy the Krell fleet before it could escape. Others argued for mercy, saying that Earth should show it was better than the invaders. The debate went on for hours. Finally, General Morrison made the decision. The Krell would be allowed to leave. They would take their ships and go back to wherever they came from. But they would leave behind all their technology and equipment. And they would broadcast a warning to any other aliens who might think about attacking Earth. The warning was simple. Earth is defended, not just by humans, but by every creature that lives on the planet. Come here looking for conquest and you will face an enemy unlike anything in the galaxy. The Krell agreed to these terms. Within a week, their ships began leaving orbit. Kyle watched them go from a command center that had been built in the ruins of the Nevada fortress. The alien vessels moved slowly, like wounded animals retreating from a fight they never should have started. But even as the immediate threat ended, Kyle knew the real work was just beginning. Earth was devastated. 3 billion people were dead. Cities lay in ruins. Farmland was destroyed. Fresh water was scarce. The survivors faced years, maybe decades of rebuilding. Amy called a meeting of all the animal program leaders. They gathered in a tent near the fortress, people who a year ago had been living normal lives. Now they were war heroes, though none of them wanted that title. They just wanted to help. The question was what to do with the animals now. The war was over, but many of the creatures had nowhere to go. Their homes were destroyed. Their habitats were poisoned. Some had become so used to working with humans that they could not return to the wild. Ryan spoke first. He said the military dogs should stay with their handlers if possible. These animals had bonded with specific people during the war. Separating them now would be cruel. Besides, the dogs would be useful in the rebuilding effort. They could help search for survivors, detect dangers, and provide security. Carl talked about the wild animals. Many of them were wounded or traumatized by the fighting. They needed medical care and safe places to recover. He proposed creating protected areas where these animals could live without human interference. The planet owed them that much. Kate discussed the marine mammals. The dolphins and whales had returned to their ocean homes, but the seas were damaged by the war. Pollution from destroyed ships and crashed alien vessels was poisoning the water. Cleanup would take years. She wanted to establish monitoring programs to track the health of ocean life. Daniel had an unexpected suggestion. He said humanity should remember what the insects did. They were the smallest warriors but played a crucial role. He wanted to protect bee populations and other beneficial insects. Too many had died in the fighting. Without them, crops could not grow, and the ecosystem would collapse. Amy listened to all these ideas and then made a proposal. She suggested creating a new organization. It would be called the Earth Defense Alliance, and its mission would be to maintain the partnership between humans and animals. Not for war, hopefully never again for war, but for mutual protection and benefit. Everyone agreed. The organization was formed that same day. Amy was put in charge. Ryan became the head of canine operations. Carl led wildlife protection. Kate oversaw marine programs. Daniel managed insect conservation. Each had authority to recruit people and secure resources. Kyle attended the ceremony where Max was officially retired from military service. The dog had earned it. He had fought in dozens of battles and saved countless lives. Now he would live with Ryan on a small farm in Virginia. Ryan had already fixed up an old house there, preparing a place where both of them could finally rest. At the ceremony, General Morrison presented Max with a medal. It was specially made for animals who served in the war. The ribbon was green and blue, representing Earth. The medal itself was shaped like a paw print. Max did not understand the ceremony, but he sat still while the medal was placed around his neck. Then he looked at Ryan, and his tail wagged. Over the next month, similar ceremonies were held around the world. Dogs received medals. Birds were honored. Even insects were recognized, though they could not receive medals. Monuments were built showing animals and humans fighting together. Schools started teaching children about the war and the crucial role animals played. Kyle was promoted to general and given responsibility for Earth's defense planning. His first project was creating a warning system that could detect alien ships earlier. His second was establishing training programs that maintained human and animal partnerships, even in peacetime. 1 year after the invasion ended, Kyle stood at a memorial in Washington. The city was still mostly ruins, but this one spot had been cleared and rebuilt. The memorial was a large stone wall with thousands of names carved into it. Human names and animal names side by side, each one a life lost defending Earth. Kyle found the section with dogs. He ran his fingers over the names, reading each one. Rex, Duke, Luna, Bella. So many brave animals. He stopped at one name in particular, Shadow, a German shepherd who had saved Kyle's life during a mission in Chicago. The dog had jumped in front of an alien weapon meant for Kyle. Shadow died instantly. Kyle lived. Someone stood beside him. It was Amy. She had come to visit the memorial too. She was looking at the section for birds where hundreds of names were listed. She told Kyle that she still could not believe what they had accomplished. Against all logic and probability, Earth survived. Kyle nodded. He said that humans had learned something important from the war. They learned that they were not alone. They shared this planet with millions of other species, and those species were not just resources or decoration. They were partners. They were allies. They were friends, Amy smiled sadly. She pointed to a quote carved at the base of the memorial. It said, "We did not save Earth alone. We had help from those who never asked why, who never hesitated, who gave everything because this is their home too." They stood in silence for a while, remembering. Then Amy mentioned something interesting. Scientists studying the captured Krell technology had found communication logs. These logs included reports sent back to the Krell homeworld during the invasion. One report stood out. It was written by a Krell commander after the battle at Iron Mountain. The message was brief but revealing. It said, "We came prepared to fight humans. We did not know we would be fighting the entire planet." Kyle laughed at that. It was a tired laugh, but genuine. The Krell had made a fundamental mistake. They saw Earth and only noticed the humans. They did not see the dogs waiting to defend their human families. They did not see the wolves in the forests. They did not see the eagles in the sky. They did not see the millions of tiny creatures that lived in every corner of the planet. The Krell thought they were invading a world run by one species. Instead, they found a world where countless species had learned to work together over thousands of years. That partnership, that bond between human and animal, was something the aliens could not understand and could not defeat. Ryan arrived at the memorial with Max. The dog was older now, moving slower, but still healthy. He walked up to Kyle and sat down, leaning against his leg. Kyle reached down to pet him. Max had lived through everything and deserved to enjoy his retirement. Ryan reported that the training programs were going well. Hundreds of people were learning to work with animals, not just for defense, but for search and rescue, for farming, for conservation. The war had taught humanity to see animals differently, to respect them as partners rather than tools. This was changing society in unexpected ways. Laws were being written to protect animal rights. Resources were being devoted to wildlife conservation. Children were being taught from a young age to respect and understand the creatures they shared the planet with. Kyle realized that maybe this was the silver lining of the invasion. Humanity had been forced to recognize that Earth was not theirs alone. They were one species among millions, all depending on each other for survival. The Krell attack had united the planet in a way nothing else could have. As the sun set behind the memorial, Kyle made a promise to himself and to every name carved in that stone. He promised that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. He promised that humanity would be better stewards of Earth. He promised that if aliens ever came again, they would find a planet even more unified, even more prepared, even more dangerous to invaders, because Earth was not just a human world. It was a world of dogs who would never abandon their friends, of birds who would defend their skies, of bears who would protect their forests, of insects who would swarm any threat, of dolphins who would guard their oceans. It was a world where every creature, from the largest elephant to the smallest bee, had proven they would fight for their home. The Krell had come looking for an easy conquest. They found something far more dangerous. They found a planet that fights back. All of it. Together. And that, Kyle thought as he watched the last light fade from the sky, was the real lesson of the war. Earth's greatest strength was not